How money and fame never got to Stephen King. How is this possible? How did Stephen King become so famous, and yet after all these decades, he still remains down to earth and is the same person he was so long ago, someone who enjoys writing? We're going to be answering those questions and more, and we're starting right now. We've always heard stories and seen famous writers who write a novel, it becomes successful, they become rich, and all of a sudden they stop writing. They're living the good life, or they write something again and it just isn't good anymore. What happened? How is it that there are some writers out there who can write one novel, have it hugely successful, and that's it? We never hear or see from that author again. But then there are people like Stephen King who can write for decades on end, since the 1970s, right up until today. And he's just as successful today as he was back then. But we don't see Stephen King living in Beverly Hills, driving the Mercedes, limousines, jet airplanes. Stephen King likes to sit down and write a novel for about 3 or 4 hours a day. Then he has lunch and he goes for a walk. And then when he comes home, he likes to sit down and read. And he's been doing this for decades. We don't see Stephen King living with these fur coats and diamonds and cashing in, driving a Lamborghini. We see him just living a nice, normal, simple life after all these decades, because Stephen King isn't motivated by money. He likes the thrill and the adventure and the fun of actually writing, creating worlds inside of his mind, and then sitting down and writing it down. And then he likes to go for a walk just to relax and clear his mind. And when he comes home to read, he reads for two reasons. One is he enjoys reading. The second is he is still learning. Even after all these decades, Stephen King says that he reads because he wants to become a better writer. He doesn't write for the money. He writes for the fun of writing. There was a time when he was a child. He wrote a story. He read a story and he copied it out word for word. And then he handed it to his mother. And his mother read it, and she was so happy because she thought he had written it. And she thought, wow, my son at such a young age wrote a very powerful short story. He then said to her, oh, I didn't write it, I copied it. And he said she had a brief moment of sadness, just kind of looking a little bit down. And he said that haunted him forever. Because afterwards, he was motivated to want to become a great writer, because he wanted to write something that was amazing, that he was going to hand to his mother and see that smile on her face again, the same smile that she had the first time he handed her a story that she thought was his. And he was so motivated by her feeling down that he never wanted to see that again. Even after all these decades, he still writes for his mother. But now that his mother's passed away, he writes for his wife, Tabitha. He doesn't care about what the critics say. He doesn't worry about how much money or how many sales the book is going to have. He writes to make his wife happy. When he's writing something, he pictures his wife reading it and laughing or reacting to whatever it is he's writing. His motivation isn't for money, but it's to make his wife happy. He wants to write something that's going to move her, that's going to make her think, and he literally will stand back and watch her reaction while she is reading to see if she reacts the same way his mother did, with that look of amazement. Because millions of people around the world read Stephen King novels, but he doesn't write for millions of people. He writes for just to make sure his wife is happy. He wants to see her reaction when he writes something. As a writer, you can use this as your own motivation. You have to ask yourself, who am I writing for? Who is that one person who I want is to read my work and love it and react to it? As a writer, you shouldn't be stressed about thinking about sales or how much money you're going to make or what the critics are going to say. If you worry about the critics, you end up freezing and not writing about anything. As a writer, you want to write about something that your goal should be for one person. That one person who you can hand your story to, a short story or a novel, and you just want to stand back and see their reaction. While you're writing, you're thinking about them. You're not thinking about the millions of dollars or the sales or what the critics are going to say. All that is outside of your mind because Stephen King says he doesn't even think twice about critics or how many books his novel is going to sell. He just thinks about Tabitha. He thinks about how she is going to react when she reads it and whether or not she's going to be entertained by what he has read. And that's what he uses for motivation. Sometimes it's best for a writer not to become successful while they're alive. You look at a painter like Vincent van Gogh. He wasn't famous while he was alive. In fact, he only sold one painting in his entire life. He died believing himself a failure. Today, everything that Van Gogh has ever painted sells for tens of millions of dollars. But what would have happened if Vincent van Gogh had become famous while he was alive? Would that have affected his work? Would there be paintings that were amazing before fame and then paintings that were weak after his fame? Because sadly, we do see this happening to a lot of famous people. A lot of writers will dedicate a lot of time and effort to writing their first few novels. After they become famous, they don't put that same effort into it anymore. And all of a sudden, their work goes downhill. And it's the work that people don't want. We see this happening with singers. They put a lot of time and effort into the first couple of albums, and those albums are amazing. But after they become rich and famous, they don't care about writing anymore. They want to just focus on the spending of their money. So all of a sudden, the next albums that come out, they're not as good anymore, and people don't want that. But imagine if you're a writer and you spend your entire life writing and nothing you write gets published. Would that actually benefit you? Would you be able to focus on the craft and not be distracted by the money? Now, for someone like Stephen King, he did become famous while he was alive, and it would have been very easy for him to give up on writing great novels just to focus on the money. But it seems that the more famous Stephen King became, the more he became better as a writer. He never did allow the fame to get to him. He still lives in the state of Maine. He never moved to California to live like a rock star. He never moved to Beverly Hills. He doesn't own fancy cars. He still lives the same simple life that he did for many decades because the focus is on the love of writing, the love of creating characters and telling a story. Stephen King isn't a horror writer, he's a storyteller. And this is what he does. He tells stories. And this is why he continues to write after all these decades, because he doesn't care about the money or the fame. He cares about telling stories because he likes to entertain people. Great writers always talk about being pulled into that imaginary world in their mind. They feel an adrenaline rush. For them, it's fun. It's like going to the gym. There are two types of people who go to the gym. Those who go to the gym, but they're not happy while working out. Eventually, they will stop going. But the ones who go to the gym and feel that adrenaline rush, that energy while working out, they will always want to go back. And Stephen King says that while he is writing, he feels alive. He feels energetic. And it's like a drug for him. Writing is, and slipping into that imaginary world, it's a drug in a world that he enjoys being in. So why would he want to stop? His goal wasn't to make money. His goal was to create stories. And as long as he can daydream, he can always feel that adrenaline rush while writing. As an amateur writer, you have to ask yourself, what is it that motivates you? Are you after the fame and the money? Or do you enjoy writing? Is that what makes you want to become a writer? Because if you are after the money, and let's say you write a book that does sell and becomes successful, now all of a sudden you lose your motivation to want to continue to write because writing will now stop you from spending of your money and living in the big house, traveling the world. But if your goal as a writer is to focus on writing and telling stories, then you're not going to care about the money. But the thing is, you have to look deep inside of yourself and ask yourself, why are you writing for? What is your motivation? Do you care about the money or do you care about the fame? Because if you care about the money or the fame, or do you care about the goal of writing? Because if you do achieve that fame, all of a sudden you're not going to want to write anymore and it's going to be a nuisance. So you have to ask yourself, is it the money or storytelling that motivates you? Because Stephen King will tell you that he truly cares about storytelling. And look at the amount of fame and money he has achieved in his life. So it would be easy for Stephen King to give into that money. But the fact that he does have that money and he doesn't give into it, it truly proves that he does care about storytelling, because he could have gave into the money, because it is there, but he didn't, because his goal is to sit down and create a world and to entertain people and to entertain Tabitha when she reads it. If you enjoyed watching this video, be sure to check out my website. In fact, I'm going to leave a link in the description down below, where my website has countless blogs that can help you become the greatest writer you can be. Because that's what I want to do. I want to help you become the greatest writer you can be. And if you enjoyed watching this video, be sure to check out my other video on, is there such a thing as a dead genre when writing your novel? In fact, I'm going to leave a link to that video right here, and you can click on that video right now and start watching.